music for all and presented by Yamaha. Welcome to today's Lunchtime Chat. On this episode, we discuss issues facing music educators and share practical ideas and solutions in preparation for the upcoming school year. And now, our host, Jerell Horton.
Hi, everybody. This is our third and final chat, and I'm so sad, but I'm super excited because the people that you are going to meet today are just outstanding. I had the opportunity to work with them this summer at the Music for All Summer Symposium, and I would like to welcome to the Lunchtime Chat today Eric Jimenez and Justin McLean.
What's going on, Jerell? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Good,
you
man.
Know, hey, trying to be like you. That's what we're trying to do.
That's at the top of my list.
No. Actually, it is the other way around. Let's be honest. We already had this discussion. It's the other way around. Our goal today is to give people an opportunity to, have a break in their day, maybe around their lunchtime, that they can just, sit and engage in some conversation with us as we talk about some things. So, there are probably people out there today who are in between teacher meetings or in between band camp, sessions. So hopefully we can have some conversation today that will be empowering and uplifting and really helpful, because I really believe in the message that I feel like you guys have to share. And I'm excited that we have this opportunity to talk today. So I'm not going to do a lot of talking right here because I want to hear from you guys. I'd like for you both to tell us about yourself. Tell us about your journey in the profession so far, and I know you guys do this very well. Talk about how you met each other, and then we'll go on from there.
Cool. I'll kick it off. So I'm currently serving as the Assistant Director of Bands at Prairie View A&M University, and half of the SCORE podcast. I got about over 12 years of experience in the public school setting, and about almost full 3 years at the university level. One of those years in the public school setting, I was an administrator. We will not talk about that 1 year, but definitely blessed that I am a product of immigrants, and I say a proud son of immigrants and a product of the Houston Independent School District, where I went back and taught for 10 of those 12 years. And then one of those years, I got to serve Aldine ISD for an entire semester before I came back to the historically Black college university, the second oldest institution of higher learning in the state of Texas, Prairie View A&M University.
You better talk about your school.
So, but yeah, definitely, that's a little bit about me. Justin, what you got, bro?
Same, man. This is actually going to be my 12th year. I'm currently the director of percussion and assistant director of bands at Hightower High School and Lake Olympia Middle School. That's in Missouri City, Fresno, kind of like 20 minutes outside of Houston, 25 minutes outside of Houston. Fort Bend ISD. This is my 4th year here in this district. Prior to that, I was in HISD, where I worked as a middle school band director for about 7 to 8 years. And then the last few years, I was in the current position I'm in now, working with Eric. Got a great chance to work with him at the beginning of my career, kind of in the middle of my career. And it's been a joy. I'm a small country town boy. Let Eric tell it. We just a little dash on the map. But my humble beginnings have kind of helped me be kind of remain that way throughout my career. And I just have I've been blessed, man. I've really been blessed. I was talking to some of my current coworkers. I haven't really had any of the horror stories that a lot of people go through in their careers, being music educators and working with different people and being in kind of some toxic environments.
Mm-hmm.
I've been blessed to work with my brother, my dear friend, mentor, kind of one of my greatest friends, and Eric. As he said, we both met at the greatest campus, the greatest HBCU known to man, the Prairie View A&M University. So I too attended there as well, and I'm the second half of the SCORE podcast.
We do not despise our humble beginnings, do we?
Not at all. Not
at all. So now that you've mentioned the podcast, let's talk about it, because when I got to meet you guys this summer, I heard this amazing story about how you guys kind of stumbled upon this thing that is really great, this podcast that's called The Score. Let's talk about it. Tell us, how did it come about?
So what you probably picked up on is that Justin and I both have the gift of gab. And then obviously getting to know you, you also do too. So,
I got it.
So, we're the type of folks that, I don't know, if you see me on a bus stop, I'm going to talk to you,
right,
and going to find out like, how's your day going and that kind of thing. So what ended up happening is that he and I would go to these, and we've always gone to our state conventions, whether it be Texas Bandmasters Association or Texas Music Educators Association convention. And we would go and at times feel as if the topics of discussion were not addressing our environment or kids like us. And so instead of being pessimists, we would go into it with an optimist mindset. And so we did the same thing in our band hall. So when we got the fortunate opportunity to work twice together, so his first job was serving with me. He got to come and be the assistant director at the middle school, and then I pulled him another like 6-7 years after that and said, "Hey man, come in, let's rebuild this high school band." And we got to work for another 2 years together there. At that high school is where we were sitting in the office and we would have these conversations and solution-based conversations where there were issues surrounding things that were happening in our program. We were on a $0 budget program. Everything was at a per request basis. And so he and I would literally sit there, and if there was an issue, we would talk about how do we create a solution for this issue. And it wasn't until one of the students that we had observing us from the local university was just kind of like, "Hey, y'all should do a podcast." And we were like, okay, like whatever, maybe. And it took us an entire year actually to finally get it off the ground. And it was one of those where I was like, "Hey man, do you have a mic?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got a handheld mic." I was like, "Well, I'll find one and let's meet up at my dad's office and let's see what we come up with." And we literally sat in his office and recorded a couple episodes on a Sunday evening, and we just kind of started pushing it out organically. And that's kind of how it happened. And I can tell you that I was inspired. I have to mention this because Justin was already putting on podcasts, listening to them before I was. And, of course, I had heard about them, but I was taking a trip to Mexico and I asked him, I said, "Hey, bro, put me on game to some podcasts." And he put me on a few. And I remember my family was dead asleep and they woke up and my wife's like, "What are you listening to?" And it was actually this like Black church perspective podcast about two Black males talking about just Christianity through their perspective. And they were talking in a vernacular and using their own colloquialisms. And actually they were on a conversation about the co-host not telling his other co-host that he was going to get a fade and get a haircut. So he's like, "Hold on, bro. How did I find out through the IG that you got a chop?" And it was just like, but these guys had advanced degrees. One of them had a doctorate. Now they both do. And I was thinking to myself, like, that's how he and I talk. That's that we don't have to code switch, and so that really inspired us. And so that was the premise of when we started. It was just like, hey, we're not going to try to be anybody else. We're going to be who we are. And if we're just going to hope somebody listens. And we're just fortunate enough that it kind of kicked off and it worked in our favor.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is so great because there are a couple things that I hear you say that is really encouraging and inspiring to me because when I talk to high school students, I tell them we have plenty of people in the world who can identify problems, but there are not a lot of people who just really focus on solutions. Yeah. So, my encouragement to them as student leaders is let's just not be problem identifiers. Let's be problem solvers. So the simple fact that you guys sat with each other to solve your problems, and now you are modeling for other educators, for people that are just really willing to listen. I commend you for just being transparent because it's hard sometimes to do that. And just like you said, here's the other thing I hear too. I know you guys only have been around me for a short period of time, but I believe that everybody has this thing about them that is unique. And when we join that with the people on the left and right of us, then we all become better. So that authenticity is important. So just like you said, it's not, we shouldn't have to code switch. We should just be who we are. Yeah. Because everybody can be enriched by having an opportunity to be around somebody that's not exactly the same as them, because there's so many different perspectives and things you learn just by being able to be around people who are different from you. So let's talk about the wealth of this of the podcast, because I started recently listening, and I mentioned this a little while ago because I was like, oh my gosh, like these guys are professionals. This is, and I'm gonna have to sit and talk with them, but really I started listening even way before we agreed to do this conversation. But like you're right, I just felt like I was on a fly on the wall while you guys were just kind of talking about things, and I think that's really awesome. So talk about how the podcast started and kind of how it's changed over the years, because you started this back in August 2019, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So talk about how it's evolved, and I think just before we were talking, talk about one of your popular episodes.
So I can definitely talk about the evolving, and then I'll let Eric attack that elephant in the room that we always discuss. I think what we originally were trying to do, man, we were trying to reach I don't want to say a demographic. We were just trying to reach a sector of band directors that were in similar situations. Not necessarily that they didn't have all of the things that they needed, but they were missing some of those things that when we go to the TBAs, the TMEAs, and when everybody throughout the U.S. goes to their conventions, they kind of hear of this utopian kind of, mindset and society and world. And so we had to come up with a lot of those things just, in the band hall, in our offices. We had to deal with a lot of those problems, whether it was funding, whether it was lack of instrumentation, whether it was lack of feeder programs or lack of whatever. We had to come up with, protocol, standards, systems that would help us compete at a high level, when me and Eric were both in the middle school sector and when we moved to the high school. So I think what it originally started off as was another form of pedagogical information that wasn't coming across in the classrooms that at the different universities, and it wasn't attacked on all spectrums when you went to TMEA and TBA, because the notion is I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to be able to pull some things that I can plug in right away in my band hall. And unfortunately, that's not true. Part of that problem is because we have people, and this is not a knock to them, but sometimes a convention can become Charlie Brown, wah, 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 right? It's the same thing over and over again because we're fearful to put those voices up that have come up with new ways to get the same, results, right? It's the same well, but they've went in a different way to get that water out. And so that's what it has started out as. Me and Eric really have a passion to make sure people in the know. I think one of our greatest gifts is that we have this desire for our kids to be in the know, that they can compete at a high level. Because at one point, both of us, whether we were in undergrad, whether we were in high school, we were just those competitive kids that was like, I don't have this, I don't have that, but I'm still gonna figure out a way to be in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to be the best. We're not trying to be numero uno, but we do want to be, in the conversation. And that's one of the things we used to tell our students. Like, at the end of the day, somebody is always gonna be better, but are you in the conversation? And so we wanted to help those band directors, those middle school band directors, get in the conversation, whether they were female, whether they were black, whether they were Latino, whether they were, Caucasian, whatever your situation called for. We were giving you things at the TMEA that you went and student taught at this great school, but you got hired at a program where you don't even scratch the surface of the things that they have where you student taught. And so what it eventually evolved into was that as we started giving that information out, we started getting emails and questions about, can you talk about this? I love how you guys talked about this. I feel like, could you discuss this? And so it kind of became a place where we were also able to, and both of us had a conversation one day after we had finished a few episodes. It was like, man, we got to start pushing in, because we would hit some things. We were like, oh, we can't go there because they're going to email us and ain't nobody going to listen. And then we just got to a place where we was like, you know what, man, we have to go next level. We have to talk about what we talk about in our office. Yes, we talk about how we can be better as teachers. Yes, Eric will sit with me and say, hey, let's teach this like this. Let's do that. Or how would we fix this, band musical thing. But a lot of times we talked about life things. A lot of times we were discussing how do we deal with the different personalities, the different socioeconomics. How do we deal with some of the even internal insecurities and code switching and things that we do, that we can also not only affirm and help people find new pedagogical approaches, but affirm who people are and let them know that they are enough, that when they stand on that podium, they are just as good as all of the GOATs and people that we look up to, if not better, because we all bring something. Like you said, Jerell, that when I'm standing on my platform and I'm standing with Eric and I'm standing with you and I'm standing with all the other people that I teach with, right, we all have something that we bring to the table, like a good band program. We sit there with our bands and we tell them, hey, that saxophone part is just as important as this, flute solo. That trombone fanfare is just as important as when we get to this section of the music. And so we're just trying to, create voices and give information for the kids that's coming after us, man. Those guys and girls that are going to be band directors, that are going to have to do it in a new and different way, but still create quality musicians and overall quality people. So, yeah.
Man, you just dropped like a lot of really great information. I'm trying to digest it all because it's so good.
That's Justin, by the way.
I was like, all those words, all the words. I take them all in, but there is something in what you just said too that really, really appeals to me, and my personal philosophy about teaching band is that you mentioned that you were also teaching life.
Yeah.
And in one of the other lunch chats, we were actually talking about just band director health. It's a conversation sometimes that we don't have
Mm.
conversations about. We don't talk
Mm.
about taking care of ourselves, physically, mentally, sometimes spiritually. We just don't talk
Right.
about all of those
Right.
things because in order for us to be our best version to help other people, we have to balance. We have to
Hmm.
create a balance. And I think what you just said is really important about what we have to do in the classroom too, is that although music is this vehicle that we use to reach all of our students, a huge part of what we're reaching them is good life skills, good
Yeah.
people skills, how to manage other people, how to be good team players, how to do all those things that make them much more successful when they leave our environment. So,
Mm.
oh
Definitely.
man, I hope y'all wrote that down because I'm gonna have to go back and watch that because it was so much on what you just said. And then Eric, take us to the next part. We were talking just before. Tell us about your most popular episode.
Now, before you jump into this, music for all, this get a little heated. So just this is not music for all. This is me and Eric. This is what we
Yeah,
did. Jerell is
for
just
sure.
asking.
Look, I'm just the host. I'm just
Yeah.
hosting.
So it was actually at the height of the social justice unrest. And I'm a part of all the Facebook groups, literally all of them, from like teachers trying to navigate the pandemic to the music teacher groups to the Facebook band director group. And when that happened, a lot of our colleagues were asking, specifically on George Floyd's death, like how do I have this conversation with my students? And the response was heartbreaking for me. And honestly, I'm gonna be real. It was upsetting. I got angry at some of the responses because we took this initiative to create online learning groups and help each other out. But when this conversation came up, it was let's not politicize this. This is the band director group. This is the music teacher group. There's no place for this. Take it somewhere else. So they were shut down. They were silenced, and I couldn't believe it. And a big part of that is because I grew up. My father would use the term culturally competent. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm a proud son of immigrants, specifically from Mexico. So I'm first generation Mexican American, but I was raised in a school. My elementary school is predominantly white. My middle school is predominantly Latino. My high school is one of the most diverse in the city of Houston. And then I went to historically Black college university. And I was one that would walk into these spaces with admiration, with this understanding of like, I want to learn the culture. I want to learn the identity. I want to be a part of it versus me inputting myself. And then when I got the opportunity, I was able to share my culture. So one of those things was really important for me, obviously. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have this conversation with my students that are now feeling some type of distress. So we made an episode and it was called White Fragility in Music Education. And we kind of blew up after that. People were sharing it because people loved it. People were loving what we had to say because Justin and I have a way of having a conversation that, and we don't do it intentionally. We just do it in a way that people say that y'all allow us to come to the table and not feel guilty. And I'm like, well, we don't do that on purpose,
Right.
but we can have a conversation that doesn't, demonize you, that doesn't make you feel bad. But I'm trying to create this tolerance for you to understand what I'm trying to say and what Justin's trying to say. And unfortunately, even in that episode, when I dropped it, I lost some friends. I got some colleagues to send me a message saying I was racist. I had some church members pretty much block me and threaten me. And so I just kind of stood strong and with Justin, and I shared everything with him. And he's like, we got to keep going because the other side of that was thank you. Thank you for having a voice. Thank you for sharing. We wanted to say this, but we don't have a platform. We're scared of the repercussions that we would receive or my students would receive. And I can be honest, one of those things throughout my entire career, I would be hesitant to say some things on social media because of the fear of what would happen to my students, not to me, because I could take it. I'm the adult. But it was one of those like, will my students get damaged on their, state ratings or, our adjudicated system ratings? Because we all know that can influence it. And unfortunately it can. So I kind of held back at times, but it was one of those that allowed us to be ourselves and really just share like, this is frustrating. This is upsetting. We can do all of this for virtual learning. But when somebody's actually in distress, you don't want to talk about it just because it makes you uncomfortable,
Yeah.
And so that's what really sparked that one episode. And from there, we just kind of gained a whole lot of traction and a lot of recurring listeners. And we're really appreciative of it because the title can be seen as clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
But when people actually heard the episode, they were like, wow, this is great. This is great information. And we gained a lot of friends and partnerships from that one episode.
Yeah. So then here comes the next question. Here we are at the beginning of a new school year. I mentioned on the other lunch chat that teachers have two New Years. You have the New Year's that happens in January, and And then you have the New Year's that happens, like,
Right.
when we start the school year
That's
over.
a fact.
So here we are starting a new school year. And for everything that you just said and what you guys just talked about, how do we begin to have those conversations in a way that we can be engaging, that we are not threatening? Because like, I know we said this earlier, like we're kind of kindred spirits here, but I want to hear out of your mouth, like, how have you been able to model that for your students? How have you been able to do that in a way that makes those conversations productive and not threatening?
Mm.
Man, I think honestly, and I think this is what kind of hurt me and Eric, and I want to say like hurt us like that, but just kind of, made us realize that people really wasn't hearing our heart, is that throughout that episode and us dealing with that kind of tension and that conversation, me and Eric thrive off relationships, man. Like,
Yeah.
our greatest joy, and with all the success that we've had individually as well as collectively, it's because we build great relationships. That's part of who we are. That's kind of Eric's makeup. That's my makeup. That's kind of we just thrive off of that. And so what I think is important when having these conversations, Jerell, is that where is our relationship in regards to our students and with the people that we may be having those conversations with? If it's not at a place where we can talk honestly, even if it's from a place of disagreement and we don't see eye to eye on something, we can still have a conversation. We can still be very vocal and we can be very bold in what we say. But because there's a bridge there, right, we can both walk across that bridge. And I think the problem is we're trying to, like, even when Eric talks about those people that, said those things and all of that, there was no real relationship there. And Eric was pushing that, what I'm saying? He was he thought that, hey, man, we go to church together. Hey, we work together. We may not be best buds, but we have a common ground where we may not see eye to eye, but you can appreciate what I have to say and vice versa. And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. Like, me and Eric have been, friends since college. And even in our working years, there have been moments because Eric has had to help me see things, and he's had to help me understand things from a teacher, professional, colleague standpoint, but also from, I'm an African-American male working with the wide range of people within the Latino community and vice versa, right? He's pulled my coattails, and I've had to say, well, that's not really this. I want to kind of help you see it in this perspective, and that's only because we're friends and we have a genuine relationship that I can receive that information in a real way and then use it to help me kind of see things the way they need to be seen, not to create, I think, like we said, that episode automatically makes it feel as though we're pushing some type of narrative and some type of, approach, when ultimately we're saying, hey, man, if we care about people, if we care about kids, if we have a relationship with the kids that are in our uniforms and sit in our band halls, then when it's time to have those conversations, they can be received. And I can tell you, man, just from even at the school that I'm at now, being able to have that level ground creates the safe space for us to have those hard conversations that we can talk about. When I talk to my kids, and I teach in a majority, African-American, Latino-based band program, we have conversations about racism and we have conversations about things that are said that are wrong. I'm trying to steer them not so much away from the tension, but trying to figure out what is the right tension, right? Is this a pure, what you felt, what a teacher might have said, how you may feel, how you perceive things? Is that bound in racism and a level of hatred, or is that in a level of ignorance? Because a lot of times we don't do life with people that don't look like us. You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
And so I have to kind of engage 13, 14 high school students to say, hey, man, everything's not that. Sometimes a lack thereof creates a lack of knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so biggest thing, man, one thing Eric is going to talk about and we both going to talk about is relationship. Yep. Most of us are not in it enough to try to foster relationship with students and even the people we work with. You know what I'm saying? Like the people that I'm on staff with now, we have rapport. So when it's time, because it's gonna happen. You're gonna turn a corner where we got to deal with something. We got to deal with what's happening in society. We got to deal with somebody dropping the ball on a Friday night game or paperwork or whatever. Okay, how do we work through this to know that my heart is not to hurt or to tear down, but ultimately We got to get past this. So we got to be building bridges so we can walk across those things. If not, it's just it's a yelling match. You know what I'm saying? If there's no bridge, then I can't meet you. If you on your side of the street and I'm on my side of the street and it's this wide gap, then all we're doing is yelling. Man, I'm just y'all. This is my bag, man. I love doing this stuff. So
what key did you just put him in, Jerell? Because that's what I want to know.
I'm about to do it. Wow, because.
But let me expand on that though. I have to, because
yeah,
we take approaches. So the relationship building, we actually do a lot of sessions on this, specifically on Stephen Covey's emotional bank deposits.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really take that approach that we cannot take withdrawals, and the withdrawal could be checking a kid, redirecting a kid, or having a difficult conversation with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We won't have that until a relationship has been established.
Right.
So we also take his other approach of seek first to understand and to be understood. And so sometimes it's about keeping our mouth shut and just being able to say, all right, you need to talk to me. You need to have a conversation with me. And then I bring it back in and I ask permission to give advice. That's something I've learned later on in my career, because I was always be the first one to try to jump in and solve the equation. Mm-hmm. Instead, I would listen. And then at the end, I say, can I give you some feedback? Is there something that I can give you? I can support you in this. This is based on my lived experiences. It might not fit, but here's what I can give you. And so that has allowed us, even till now, that's the secret. When I did it in the leadership training, we talked about, if you want to get more out of others, you have to know their name. You have to get to know them. You have to know what makes them tick, because you can't just tell them, take the first step, and you don't even know what lunch they like, and it's like, you will get more out of a person. And so unfortunately, some of our colleagues wonder why they get negative reaction from kids. And it's because they overdrafted. You haven't made enough deposits. And so you took that withdrawal and you overdrafted. Now the kid is quitting band. Now the kid is quitting your organization. And they're thinking, and you're questioning, well, what did I do wrong? You literally didn't learn their name. You literally didn't find out what makes them tick. And so one of the things that, all of us, all three of us are blessed with, is that we walk in with representation already. And so that black and brown kid already sees themselves in us. And then they're reaffirmed when they come up to me. And just, the high school that I took over last year for that one semester, I had a kid come up to me like, hey, mister, what are you? I was like, what do you mean? Jokingly, like, what are you talking about? And of course, they don't have the language to kind of ask the proper question. And I know what they were asking. And so I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, human? I don't get what you're trying, No, mister, are you Mexican? I said, man, I'm Mexican through and through, man. You don't see. And then in Spanish, we have a phrase that said, no me miras el nopal en la frente. Like, you don't see the cactus on my forehead. Mm-hmm. Like, as a sense of pride. And he started joking, like laughing, like, oh yeah, man, I knew you were Mexican, And so when I left that program, I had several students write me letters about how much the representation meant for them. One specifically, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, and I won't mention his name, but he wrote me a letter and said, thank you for showing us what our Latino fathers don't know how to show.
Wow.
And and that was one of those tear jerkers. And it was just kind of like, because I walked in with that understanding that I have to provide this model, this person, this being of like, I'm still proud of who I am, but I'm walking forward and showing y'all how to operate within the system of society in the United States, not just music. It was just, here's how I'm successful in this aspect. And I shared all of those things. So I would use terms like Latinx if they preferred it. Even though I identify as Latino, but some of my students were non-binary and they appreciated that. So when I asked for their pronouns on the senior recognition list, when I made the announcement, that was just something small that I could add on a Google form, but it meant so much for the students that identified as such. So that allowed even more so for those guards to come down from those kiddos that had those barriers up and said, I can trust him. I can have this uncomfortable conversation with him and my peers.
That's good.
That is so good. And I think, while I'm listening to you guys talk, these two illustrations, this illustration of the bridge and this illustration of this emotional bank, because I am one to joke about that too. Is like when I meet someone for the first time, I'm going to drop, a metaphorical $1 million in the other person that I'm meeting. And hopefully they'll do the same to me. So that if ever we got to a point where we needed to have a conversation that was contentious, you can make a withdrawal, but there's enough invested in each other that even if you took out a little bit, we're still in a good place. And I think it's interesting that if that has been the way we've always dealt with students when it comes to issues such as this, why don't we use a similar approach? Why does it have to be different? When when it only just takes a little bit of getting to know someone in order to be able to understand and relate, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
And
yeah.
matter of fact, in one of the other lunchtime chats, we were talking about um, Kim Shuttlesworth and David Aylett were talking about transitioning into new schools, and both of them talked a lot about rapport and the importance of walking into that experience to build as much rapport as possible. And it made me remember that at one point in time, everybody always asks you who's your favorite student, and I got to a point where I had to really think about it, and I kind of removed myself from the situation, and I thought, it's not that I have favorite students, it's I have students that I have more rapport with than others.
Yeah.
So think about it like
That's
this. So if
good.
I'm standing at the door as you come in the band room, and you walk past and I'm standing there to say hello to you, and you take a moment to say hello to me, we're probably going to have a very organic conversation. What'd you do
Right.
this weekend? Oh, did you see this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's awesome. And then here we are, we're starting to like build rapport with each other. But if I miss opportunities to build rapport with the student, and the student doesn't take the opportunity to build a rapport with me, then there's always going to be that wall there that,
Yeah.
like Justin said beautifully, we're just yelling at each other.
Yep.
There's no way for us to cross that bridge or find a way to meet each other. So what and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is we missed an opportunity with the tool that we already had.
Yeah. Yeah. I said it kind of haphazardly in one of the episodes where I said, and this is kind of dealing with what we're talking about right now. In so many words, I was like, we're so caught up on making ones that we forget about the ones in the chairs.
Oh,
Right.
that is beautiful.
and I said that because yes, relationship building is easy. Yes, it's just kind of natural for us, but some things that come natural we take for granted and
Yeah.
we overlook them.
Right.
Because we live in this I don't care if you're in Texas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, wherever. It's a competitive aspect to what we do. And so we can get so caught up in, I've got to get this sound, this piece. When I take it to my evaluation, everybody's played it. They know what it should sound like. And so you get so caught up in the work that the very people that you are using, as the instruments to put forth your product, you leave them in the dust, man. And I would just go on. I think for me and Eric, we've been to the mountaintop, right? We may not have been to state. We may not have been to BOA and all of that. But I think you kind of get to a place in your career where you have to say, am I okay with having a competent, competitive band program? And that's it. You know what I'm saying? And
That's a
that's
heavy
really
question for some people.
But that's the question that most of us don't want to answer. Like, if you was to ask me right now, we have rebuilt this program. When I got to the school I'm at, we had like 50 kids, maybe. We now are pushing 110, 115 with the pandemic. My percussion program has expanded. I mean, it's just amazing. Like, I was at band camp this week, and they were in sectionals working on the things, and it was just a beauty to see that something that I don't think we were so invested in the music. Yes, we wanted them to sound good, and it was scary during COVID online, but we have created something, and I said, this is what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Like, I may never make it to state. I may never have a BOA or Grand Nass group. I may never be in those circles, and I don't really want to be. Not because I can't. I could overwork myself. I'm that guy. Like me and Eric, we have done the stay late, go to everything, overworked. We've done it. And you have to be able to sacrifice your own pride and say, man, it ain't really about this. Because 10 years from now, when your kids see you somewhere, Jerell, our students that we taught see us randomly around the city, they're not going to remember standing on the sidelines prepping for a contest. They're going to remember sitting in our band hall talking. They're going to remember the jokes that we had. They're going to remember those conversations that were hard, the tears came out of their eyes. And ultimately, that's what we've been called to do, man. As band directors, like, I know we were like, oh, we want to be DCI Junior. But no, it's really not. That's really not what it's about, man. And I think more directors have to get to a place where, what is enough success for you? That's really what's enough success.
Well, and even even if you omit the word enough from that sentence, what is success?
Yep.
I think that's the question
right.
that you have to answer.
Shameless plug. We did an episode on that. So
Get in that. Listen, get in that podcast, y'all. Listen. But you made me think about a conversation that I had just recently with a former student of mine who is a band director now. And y'all, let me tell y'all, there is not a better human being on this planet.
Wow.
And we were just having this conversation about, what we do is tough.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some tears involved in this conversation, and my encouragement to him, and I want to say this to you guys, but really I want to encourage anybody that may be watching this chat right now, is, there were some expectations that he had that weren't quite being met. And I said to him, because this is the way I think about my own self too, if I can walk in that room and help one kid, I've done my job.
Yeah. Yep.
And the reason why I think that way is, I'm getting emotional. What is happening right now? But
it happens. It happens on these. It happens like that.
Because my band director, Lisa Buck, walked in that room, and she helped one kid. And here I am.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she didn't just help me, but I have other people that were in our very, very small band situation now that are out and doing really wonderful things. And I can't imagine what it was like for her coming into a more rural area, small school, having to do a lot of things on her own. But she did that stuff for us, and she helped us. And every time I talk to her, she just beams with pride. And that makes me feel good, because I feel like I've honored, now that I've been in the profession for a little while, I've honored that work that I know that she was doing too. So I'm really, Justin, what you said is important. And I think it is something to be thought of in our profession. You have to be able to define what success is, and it's not a bad thing. This is the part of this conversation that we have to qualify. Is it's not a bad thing is if whatever you choose to be success.
Right, for sure.
It's a decision that I think we all have to make. I am not shy by telling any kid that walks into my band room, music may not been the reason that you walked in the room, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And if music is not the reason that you walked in this room, then let's agree on what we're going to do together. Because there are going to be some things you might have to sacrifice in order to get whatever it is you chose to get out of this space.
Nice.
And in order for you to get that, then we need to be excellent at the music part of it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not asking you to be first chair.
For sure.
It's called a treble clef. It's not a button, it's a valve. Like it's like those simple things that you just want to be excellent at doing, because everybody has something they want to get out of it. So I want to wrap this up just by give us let's see, how can I say this? I want you to think about your best encouragement for anyone who is in the profession that's either been a long time, short period of time, but they have thought, I hear what they're saying. Sometimes I'm in a situation where I feel like the information that I get may not be, information that may be relevant to where I am. Like, how do you solve those problems in a way that's not, yelling at other people and pointing fingers, but how do you create the kind of environment that I feel like you guys have created around yourselves, where you are allowing these conversations to happen, you invite other people in, and it's beneficial for everybody that's involved. What's your advice?
So I just recently got the fortunate opportunity to do a guest lecture at University of Texas, El Paso. And I was blessed in that aspect, because this was my first course that I taught nothing but Latino students at the collegiate level. So that in itself allowed me to see an entire population that looked like me. And I pretty much told them, man, we need you. Be who you are. Don't hide that, because I recently just joined the Mexico Music Symposium at Dartmouth College, and they're focusing on wind ensemble and wind repertoire and chamber music compositions that come from Mexico, because that I did not experience in my formalized music education. Anything remotely Latino was from the Caribbean, and more than likely was represented in my jazz band, and hence why I probably gravitated towards that ensemble more than any of the ones that I had. So I think folks like Omar Thomas has allowed us to see, like, you can bring who you are, your lived experiences, your church. I mean, I sat in his session at TBA, and he talked about he has Coltrane's Diminished Lick in Come Sunday. He has Good Times in there, a little lick in there. And when I'm hearing these folks talk, and I think it's where we have to give ourselves permission at times, if we're purists in this profession, like, well, it's the way it's always been done. And you have to ask yourself, why? You
Right.
know, why have we not given the space for these folks that look different from us, that sound different from us, that have different lived experiences? And in return, it's going to make my participation in this richer. When I go and visit another country, specifically Mexico, I go into these spaces that I don't frequent, that aren't common, that aren't the tourist attractions. And I go sit in the mom and pop restaurant because I want to be submerged in the culture. I think we need to give ourselves permission in the profession to allow more of that, because with this country that's constantly changing, the demographics are shifting. The state of Texas alone, 53% of the students K through 12 are Latino, but yet the representation and participation in our ensembles does not reflect that, and it's actually underrepresented. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And so we have to do something different. And I think if you're listening to us and you're kind of, you know, allowing yourself the thought that maybe I can entertain this, maybe I can be more inclusive in my programming, maybe I can have conversations and bring in guest conductors and composers that reflect the culture and identities that my students carry. I think that's one that's going to challenge you as an educator, but it's going to benefit you, not only you, it's going to benefit your kids, because they're going to acknowledge that you made that effort and to be seen, to be heard within that classroom that says, then I have a space in this profession versus let me assimilate so I can feel like I'm a part.
Right.
Wow.
Justin, how about you?
Man, how do I back that up, right? That's what I got to do every episode. I think for me, it's simple. Who you are and what you have to offer doesn't have an expiration date.
Wow. That's
I
good.
think that in the band world, I was just talking to me and Eric were talking about this, and just some of my other friends that are band directors. It's like music has always been what we call like a young man's game in a sense, right? Like the greatest musicians, the greatest jazzers, the greatest R&B, gospel, whatever, they've been great at what they do, and that's what they've been able to kind of move with the times. But if you listen to Whitney, Whitney gonna be Whitney. If you listen to Marvin, Marvin's gonna be Marvin. If you listen to Mahalia Jackson, right, Mahalia's gonna be Mahalia. And I think in the band directing world, we give ourselves this narrative that, man, I'm against the clock, right? As a percussionist, there's so much happening in the percussion world that wasn't a thing when I was in middle school and in high school. You know what I'm saying? Like, we was drumming, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, it's light years ahead. Just the information, the technique, the opportunity to see all of this stuff with a click of a button, and you can get on a seminar, you can watch a YouTube and all of this. But we have to remember that being a great band director, being a great educator isn't about being so well versed with the times. It's understanding that your years of service, your maturity, your seasonalness, right, is what's most valued, because you've walked a road that no matter how much the music has changed, no matter how much we have technology on the band field now, no matter how much we've moved from, straight drilling and straight, marching to now there's so much marching arts and movement and motion, you have something that everybody wants, which is the information to how to make it down this road, right? And so for me, that's what's keeping me, inspired and keeping moving. That, like, I don't have an expiration date. Like, whenever I choose to hang it up, I choose to hang it up, not because I'm too old for the game, but because I'm just choosing to do that. And that whatever you have, what Eric has, what I have, what you have, it's needed for every generation. And if it wasn't the case, then we would all been out of years ago. You know what I'm saying? But there is no expiration date. Come to the table every day and try to figure out how you can, put new clothes on an old message. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm doing every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm now at the point, I'm 34. I was, 22, 23, so I was still very much in the culture. I find myself watching Judge Mathis and Judge Judy and watching, SVU, and you know what I'm saying? I was like, God, dog, what is happening? Right. And so I have to tap into the IG. I have to tap into what's happening. Like, me and my wife were on our way to, eat after church, and she was like, I don't know. And we're both musicians, singers, we create and all that. And she was like, I don't know any of the new music. And I was just like, you don't have to. We're at a place now where we've paid our dues. I don't have to apologize for listening to who I want to listen to. I don't. My grandma didn't apologize to me to listening to Luther every time I got in the car. You know what I'm saying? So
you better speak, sir.
So my encouragement, because we are in a tough place right now, Jerell. Like, some of us are going back to schools and environments and ISDs and situations where there is just a lot of weight. And you have to remember that you don't have an expiration date, ma'am or sir. That whatever you have to give, whatever that is that you bring to the table, bring it, reshape it, refashion it, however you need to. But those kids that you've been teaching for the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in high school, they need that information, and that's why they keep showing up. They're not showing up because they're waiting for you to pull out the most amazing drill or pull out something from Santa Clara or pull out a show from no, they're coming because you have something that they're still just trying to master and understand and get. So, yeah.
Wow. Listen, I cannot think of any better way to end our lunch chats than what you just said, because I have to tell you, Justin, brother, you just really encouraged me to. I've always been known to joke that I always say that I'd be crazy to think that I'm irreplaceable. Like, I know that I'm replaceable. Somebody can come in and do my job tomorrow.
Right.
But I am known to say they just can't do it how I do.
I know that's right.
For sure. That's a fact. That's
And
a
what
fact.
you just said is something that should be encouraging to every educator that's listening. There is no expiration date for you, and what you bring to the table is so valid. So I want to thank you, brothers, for hanging out with me today and having this conversation that I think is so important. Eric and Justin, please answer the phone when I call. I know I keep joking, but don't try to ghost me or nothing like that. When I call you, please answer.
Nah, we got you. We got you.
Man.
And I just want to encourage all of you, if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to the Score podcast, please do, because I think there's some information there that you will really, 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 really enjoy. And I just appreciate you guys taking out your time to hang out with me today. So this is our last lunch chat. I know you're very sad. I'm very sad too, because it's been I feel inspired and just ready to get started with my school year, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. So thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Justin and Eric, for hanging out with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Please check back with Music for All. There's always something happening to help you along your journey. So thank you guys so much.